Birthing a cinematic universe in 2008, Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau and starring Robert Downey Jr. as the titular superhero, was something of a surprise hit for the burgeoning Marvel Studios. The film was celebrated for its dynamic direction, whip-fast writing, and pitch-perfect performances. But amongst comic book fans, it was held aloft as an example of how to faithfully adapt superhero stories from page to screen. In this brand new series, which I'm launching right now, I'm going to be taking an in-depth look at the specific issues that inspired the MCU, journeying back through comic book history to find the true origins of these on-screen heroes. And where better to begin than with the Armored Avenger who kickstarted it all. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and these are the comic book inspirations behind Iron Man. First appearing in Tales of Suspense issue 39, cover dated March 1963, Tony Stark makes you feel he's a cool exec with a heart of steel. As Iron Man, all jets ablaze, he's fighting and smiting with repulsor rays. Alright, that's enough of that. The now famous origin of a brilliant inventor, a life-threatening injury, a change of heart, pun intended, and the creation of an armoured suit to become a superhero was first devised by writers Stan Lee and Larry Lieber and artists Don Heck and Jack Kirby. And it's from this first appearance that much of Iron Man's movie origin is directly translated. In this story, titled Iron Man is Born, Tony Stark is every bit the genius, billionaire, playboy philanthropist that he would become on screen. During a visit to Vietnam to demonstrate one of his company's advanced weapons to the military, Stark's life takes a dramatic turn when he's caught in an enemy ambush. A booby trap explosion severely injures him, and he's captured by enemy soldiers. Taken prisoner, he's ordered to build a powerful weapon for his captors. But instead of creating a weapon for his enemies, Tony Stark uses his intellect to devise a plan for his escape. With the help of fellow captive Professor Yinsen, Stark secretly constructs an armoured suit equipped with advanced technology, weapons, and a protective exoskeleton. Working tirelessly, Stark completes the suit and becomes the armoured superhero known as Iron Man. He uses the suit's incredible power to confront the enemy soldiers, defeating them and making his way to safety. Heroically, Professor Yinsen sacrifices his life to buy Stark the time he needs to complete his escape. And the issue ends with Tony Stark donning his coat and hat and walking into the jungle, pontificating on his new career as a superhero and setting the stage for the many adventures ahead. So look, clearly Iron Man's comic book origin remains pretty much intact in the movie, save for a few modernisations. And over the next handful of issues, the character will be further fleshed out with new suits, weapons, and a familiar supporting cast. In Iron Man's second appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 40, the armoured industrialist first makes use of his iconic Unibeam. Then in issue 45 we are introduced to Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts, who would each go on to play major roles in both the comics and the MCU. And then in Tales of Suspense issue 48, Iron Man dons the iconic red and gold colour scheme that would define the character. But it wasn't until Iron Man issue 163, cover dated October 1982, that the movie's central antagonist made his comic book debut, Obadiah Stane. In the movie, Stane, portrayed by Jeff Bridges, is a close family friend to Tony Stark, and the chief operating officer of Stark Industries. That is, until he betrays his business partner by joining forces with the Ten Rings to organise Stark's assassination. But if you're looking for this heel turn in the comics, you won't find it, as Obadiah Stane, created by Denny O'Neil and Luke McDonnell, is introduced as a villain right from the start. A chess-obsessed, wealthy financier, Stane set his sights on acquiring Stark Enterprises, and ordered his agents, the Chessmen, to attack Stark and his associates, leading Tony to relapse into alcoholism. Stane would eventually succeed in buying out the then-named Stark International, which he of course renamed Stane International, and then set about recreating the Iron Man armour. In Iron Man issue 200, we get the first appearance of Stane's superior armour, which he calls the Ironmonger. Just like in the movie, the Ironmonger proves to be a formidable foe for old Shellhead, but Stark eventually comes out on top. As the Iron Man comic series continued, more essential pieces of the Armored Avengers puzzle were put in place. In Iron Man issue 118, James Rhodes is introduced as Stark's personal pilot and chief aviation engineer. Rhodey would go on to play a major role in future Iron Man stories, including taking up the mantle himself while Tony battled alcoholism, before eventually getting his own armour as War Machine.
Next time, baby.
In Iron Man issue 184, Stark moves to the West Coast, setting up his base of operations in California, And in issue 222, we see for the first time Stark's cliffside Malibu mansion, which would become an iconic location in the MCU. Now, in 1991, writer John Byrne revised Iron Man's origin story in Iron Man issues 267 and 268, putting forth the idea that Stark's arch-foe the Mandarin was behind his capture. And this gets reflected in the movie by having the Ten Rings as the terrorist group who imprisoned the hero. In Iron Man Volume 3, issue 55, Tony Stark reveals to a press conference that he is Iron Man, albeit without the iconic line,
"I am Iron Man."
My turn.
Now, if you go looking for lists of the greatest Iron Man comics of all time, you're going to find two answers that come up again and again: Demon in a Bottle and Armor Wars. Two classic stories, both written by David Michelinie and Bob Layton, who, as a creative team, had two legendary runs on the character. Demon in a Bottle is a 9-issue story arc that ran from Iron Man issue 120 to 128 in 1979, with art by Layton, as well as John Romita Jr. and Carmine Infantino. Armor Wars, meanwhile, is a 7-issue arc with art by Mark D. Bright, and a great epilogue by one of my all-time favourite artists, Barry Windsor Smith, which appeared in Iron Man issues 225 to 232 in the late 80s. And look, while the movie wasn't a direct adaptation of either of these stories, they clearly heavily influenced the film's plot and characterization of Tony Stark. Demon in a Bottle was a groundbreaking comic that dealt with the hero's alcoholism, which is alluded to in the film, and Armor Wars explored the idea of Stark's technology falling into the wrong hands, and him having to deal with the fallout of that, just like in the movie. Which makes sense, that these would be so influential. These are character-defining comics that I'd recommend any Iron Man fan go and check out if you haven't already. Alright, so those are the comic books that influenced the movie's story in a significant way, but I feel like it would be remiss of me not to mention the comic that, in my humble opinion, almost single-handedly defined the tone and visual aesthetic of the MCU's Iron Man. Extremis is a 6-issue story arc from Iron Man Volume 4, issues 1 through 6, published in 2005 and 2006. Written, unfortunately, by disgraced writer Warren Ellis, but redeemed by the illustrative talents of artist Adi Granov, it's hard to imagine what a cinematic Iron Man would look like without this comic. The entire blueprint is right there on the page. Granov's painted style shoves Tony Stark and his alloyed alter ego towards photorealism, and the artist's widescreen panel layouts are about as cinematic as comics get. If any comic can be pointed to as a movie storyboard in the making, it's Iron Man Extremis. In issue 5, Iron Man's origin is retold through flashbacks, and it's impossible not to see where Jon Favreau got his cues. While issues 3 and 4 feature an action set piece on a highway, with Iron Man having to dodge and catch civilian cars, not dissimilar to the final confrontation with Obadiah Stane in the movie. And even the Adi Granov designed armour bears a close resemblance to its cinematic counterpart. In fact, so influential was Granov's work on this story that the artist was brought onto the film as a producer, and went on to create the final designs for the movie's armour. Not to mention the fact that Extremis would form the basis for the plot of Iron Man 3, but we'll save that for a future video.
Next time, baby.
But finally, we have to talk about maybe the most important post-credit scene in movie history, which introduced Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, giving us our first taste of the massive scope of this shared universe. Comics history buffs, and those of you who have seen my video 15 Marvel characters based on real people, will already know that before Jackson was cast in the MCU, his likeness was used for the ultimate version of Nick Fury. First appearing in Ultimate Marvel Team-Up issue 5, cover dated August 2001, writer Brian Michael Bendis and artist Mike Allred quote-unquote cast Samuel L. Jackson in the role, which would ultimately lead to him playing the character in live action. So hey, that's every comic that significantly inspired 2008 Iron Man. I'm a huge Iron Man fan, but I'm not an expert by any means, so if I've missed anything, let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to Panels to Pixels and give that bell icon a little ring-a-ding-ding so you never miss out on future videos. As always, heroes, take care of yourselves, exercise some self-care, have a nice bubble bath or a, I don't know, herbal tea, eat a banana, fruit's good for you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.